Welcome back to New Rockstars. I'm Erik Voss, and Fantastic Four First Steps finally revealed so many details about this movie's plot, including Galactus' attack on Earth and what might be the most tense scene of the film, as well as Reed Richards' role as the chief engineer of this alternate 1960s New York, and Sue Storm as the head of the Future Foundation, all in a comprehensive article from Entertainment Weekly. So in this video, I'm going to break down everything we now know about this film in another fantastic update, or fantastic forecast. That's a much better name. And a huge thanks to Audible for sponsoring today's content. I am beyond excited to listen to Sunrise on the Reaping, available now on Audible. On April 10th, Entertainment Weekly published this expose. Welcome to the retro future inside the Fantastic Four's first steps into the MCU. And they included this really cool motion poster showing each of the four in their spacesuits with some new footage of them prepping for their initial space mission before they get their powers. This article also includes new images, the shot of the four in these suits ahead of their launch, while scientists and media from this universe's version of NASA surround them. On the far right, you can actually see it's American something space something, and actually on their patches on the motion poster, it's American National Space Agency, or ANSA, not NASA, which is National Aeronautics and Space Administration. Because remember, this is an alternate universe. So it's kind of like how in 2018 Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, they pulled the 1610 alternate universe details of making it the PDNY instead of the NYPD. And this movie is doing the same thing with organizations like NASA, which tells us something about the history and political structure of this world. And I'll get into that a little bit later. But there's also this image of Sue hugging Johnny, which I think is from the scene in the CinemaCon trailer footage of the moment Sue and Reed tell Johnny and Ben that Sue is pregnant. There's this new image of Ben Grimm suiting up in a spacesuit with that ANSA patch also visible here. And then this image of Johnny and Reed beside their new spacesuits, the one Reed made after their initial space flight to better fit their new altered physiologies. You can see that Ben's suit is larger in the chest and shoulders because he's a big rock boy now. Reed's suit on the far right, I assume, would be adapted to stretch along with Reed's limbs. Johnny's is probably flame resistant in a way to temporarily catch fire when his body flames on and then go back to normal when he extinguishes himself, and probably the same for Sue's invisibility. And now that they are the Fantastic Four, Reed has placed a number 4 on the belt buckles of the suit. And there's a new photo of Sue Storm carrying some notebooks emblazoned with the 4 logo. And you can also see she's wearing a specific wristwatch type device that I'll talk about a little bit later. This article by Christian Halub, who visited the set and observed a major scene as it was being shot in September 2024, opens with a description of what is described by Matt Shackman as the all is lost moment of the film. So we get a description of Reed Richards' lab in the Baxter building, which is divided into 3 sections, organized by the primary colors. The red room for research with tables full of inventions, the yellow room for thinking filled with blackboards covered in complex equations. That's the room we saw Reed mathing all over in the February teaser, and the blue room for monitoring with sophisticated screens and communication equipment. This room might be the most important because this communication and observation equipment isn't just for the people of Earth, but also for cosmic anomalies, which would include Galactus and the Silver Surfer. That seems to be what the Fantastic Four are dealing with in this scene. The article describes, quote, "Something's gone horribly wrong. Cut the power, screams Pedro Pascal in character as Reed. In response to his desperate order, a blinding light fills the set at Pinewood Studios outside London before cutting out and leaving Pascal's Reed and his family drenched in darkness. People calling, says Eben Moss-Bachrach, sitting at one of the lab's monitors as Ben Grimm, the Thing. Indeed, lights are blinking all over, indicating that whatever's causing the power outage is also inspiring distress calls from all over the world. For once, the Fantastic Four are at a loss. We're working on a pretty crucial moment, which in script writing you call the all is lost moment. Director Matt Shackman tells Entertainment Weekly, the plan that you think is going to work fails, and you have to come up with another plan. The pressure on our heroes is at its highest. So the article doesn't speculate on the context for this moment, but I think I know what it is. We are probably seeing the Fantastic Four's attempt to confront Galactus and or the Silver Surfer, and this would be late in the second act. And I say it's late in the movie because of the exact wording Matt Shackman uses. He calls it the all is lost moment, and the all is lost moment in screenwriting suggests this film, first off, is using a traditional 3-act screenplay structure outlined in various screenwriting and story structure books like Here with a Thousand Faces or McKee. And really, Basically, the all is lost moment refers to what's preceded by a false victory, where you think everything's about to work, and you look at your watch and you're like, wait, we still have like 35 minutes left in this movie, and of course, everything falls on its face. A devastating setback felt by the heroes, and it's usually about like 2/3 of the way through the film, and that then requires the heroes to accept the possibility that they really could lose and die, and search their souls, get over something that they've been trying to get over all movie, and synthesize a solution that often requires some kind of painful sacrifice play. So I don't think this cut the power moment is like the moment referenced at the CinemaCon trailer when Reed said, I stretched the boundaries of space and they heard. Like, I don't think this is the moment Reed Richards first accidentally contacts Galactus or first runs into Silver Surfer. I think that first contact has already happened by this point. The all is lost moment would definitely be happening later in the movie. So I think this all is lost moment is the Fantastic Four's attempt to stop or trap Galactus. And I think what's really happening here connects with the clip that opened the first teaser.
We make a point to do family dinner every week. Sunday at 7, on the dot, no matter what.
Haha, yes, this old gem. It's the clip that Marvel Studios has been reposting on Twitter actually every Sunday at 7 o'clock Eastern time on the dot. And I think the reason the marketing has focused so much on this clip is because Reed is actually knowingly using the media to set a trap for Galactus to come target them at the Baxter Building at a precise time so that every Sunday they can be ready for him. Which could be why in the February teaser, when the Fantastic Four look out from the Baxter Building at the fiery clouds in the sky, we see them checking the devices on their wrist. And in that photo of Sue Storm, we see that she has that same device that we see on Reed and Ben in the other trailer shots. We know that Reed's mathematical solutions in his yellow thinking room include equations pertaining to the multiverse. And I think Reed's plan is to open a rift in reality and trap Galactus in another universe somewhere away from them. That's the only way he could confront something that big and that ancient. But the surge of energy required will overload the Baxter Building, which will then lead to Reed saying, cut the power, and then a mysterious blinding white light. Now, I was curious about this because if they were to just, cut the power, pull the plug, wouldn't the lights just go out without any kind of explosive white light that filled Pinewood Studio, as Entertainment Weekly writer described? I think that white light is something else. Not a fuse breaking, but something bigger, an accidental consequence of Reed's plan, an incursion. The article describes the board lighting up with calls coming from around the world. Why would the calls be coming in from around the world if it was a localized electrical grid problem? Even if it were just Galactus can only face one side of the world at a time. You wouldn't have people in like Seoul, South Korea being like, hey, we're also dealing with something right now. It must be something that is planetary, and only an incursion could be that big. I think Reed, by trying to create a rift in reality, created an incursion that accidentally infected the entire planet. Like J. Robert Oppenheimer, he created a chain reaction that engulfed the world. The article actually backs this up with a lot of descriptions about how this entire alternate Earth is hardwired according to Reed's inventions and technology and Sue's global organizing efforts. There are descriptions of the retrofuturist design influences that director Matt Shakman described as where Kirby meets Kubrick. It reads, the film begins on a parallel world in the Marvel multiverse where history has unfolded differently. In our timeline, the 50s and 60s were full of artists and thinkers who imagined utopian futures full of miracle inventions like flying cars and robot friends. In this world, Reed Richards exists to invent them. We knew that we'd be on another Earth, so we had a chance to reinvent what the 60s looked like, Shakman says. I was really interested in imagining the Fantastic Four being astronauts. Instead of Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin going to the moon, what if it was Reed, Sue, Johnny, and Ben who were really the first to go into outer space, the first to push those boundaries? So, if we were playing a game of what if here, the universe of the Fantastic Four is, what if all the retrofuturist designs and concepts dreamt up by artists and thinkers in the 50s and 60s had a brilliant engineer who existed at that time and had the ability to make those dreams a practical reality, to make them real. This, by the way, would also suggest that Reed Richards definitely does not exist in the 616 MCU, because all those retrofuturist designs in the 50s just gave us, Tomorrowland and the Jetsons, and movies like this now. But also in this article, Matt Shakman described Reed Richards as, quote, a combination of Steve Jobs, Albert Einstein, and Robert Moses. Steve Jobs, of course, was the CEO of Apple, who, despite not being the hardware and software tinkerer that Steve Wozniak and others on Jobs' team were, he was really the public visionary that Apple needed to change the way society thought about personal computing and digital technology. Albert Einstein, the genius behind a number of things, including the theory of relativity, who ultimately left a legacy of caution when it came to things like quantum mechanics and nuclear technology. Robert Moses, the great urban planner who worked in New York City in the mid-20th century, who inspired a generation of infrastructure projects and aspirational urban development. So Shackman is basically saying, what if there was a Marvel universe who had a theoretical physicist who led the scientific community in concepts of space-time and knowing when to keep the lid on the Pandora's box, and that same guy was also a great urban planner building utopian cities and making our everyday lives more livable, and that guy was also a public spokesperson who loves the camera and finding ways to make these big ideas less scary to the public. The article, in addition to confirming Sue Storm is pregnant with probably Franklin Richards, makes another big confirmation about Sue. It reads, Sue has accomplished just as much in the political realm as head of the Future Foundation, a concept taken from writer Jonathan Hickman's 21st Century Fantastic Four comics, one of the successor stories that is as beloved by fans as Lee and Kirby's originals. She has helped achieve global demilitarization and peace. When Shackman and his collaborators say the dreams of the 60s have been made real in this movie, they don't just mean rocket ships. Quote, if he is the most scientifically intelligent person, then she is the most emotionally intelligent person on the planet. Shackman says of Reed and Sue, between the two of them, they are building an idealistic society. So, Future Foundation, we got a shirt for that. Our Future Foundation shirt and our new Daredevil Josie shirt are my new favorite designs on our merch store, nerdriot.shop, which is the best way to support new Rockstars. But yes, it is confirmed. The Future Foundation in this movie refers to a global organization headed up by Susan Storm that has achieved global demilitarization and world peace. In the comics referred to in this article, the Future Foundation is a little bit different. It's a Fantastic Four adjacent organization that includes a white-suited Spider-Man and an assortment of younger, lesser-known heroes who join Reed and Sue's kids, Franklin and Valeria Richards, ultimately as part of an organization that later rebuilds the multiverse after Secret Wars. But here, the Future Foundation is something different and tells us a lot about how this world actually works. The inclusion of the Future Foundation in the marketing for this film and the San Diego Comic-Con concept trailer opening with "The Future Foundation presents," it just reframes the marketing of this film as in-universe propaganda from Sue Storm's global peacekeeping organization. And this also tells us why it's not NASA, it's ANSA. NASA, remember, began as the United States competing with the Soviet Union in the space race throughout the 50s and 60s. But it sounds like in this universe, there was no Cold War. And since Reed Richards is described as this universe's Einstein, I'm willing to bet he was a younger scientist in America in the 30s and 40s, and certainly would have been recruited, as all of America's top scientists and physicists were at that time, by J. Robert Oppenheimer in the Manhattan Project. And as the smartest guy in that room, he probably found a way to win World War II without this group having to build an atomic bomb. So not only is there no Cold War, we also know there's no military-industrial complex. Matt Shackman made a statement in Empire saying that they're not going to run into Iron Man, telling us that there's probably no Stark Industries either. We also have to assume Hydra's been vanquished, because Hydra and Captain America Winter Soldier was described as the secret organization responsible for most of the terrorism throughout the 20th century. Now, the question is, are there Eternals and a giant celestial named Tiamat sleeping in this planet's core? Maybe, I don't know. But I'm assuming this universe is a non-nuclear society at least. And instead, Reed has Robert Morst New York City to run on some other kind of quantum energy that would be way safer, and now they are drawing on that energy source to create a rift to trap Galactus, and it all goes horribly wrong. Pedro Pascal in this article said, it's definitely a scale of threat which Reed has never experienced. Even the smartest man in the world is awestruck by a being that outdates his understanding of time. So Galactus in the comics comes from a previous iteration of the universe, the 6th iteration of the universe, and then he gestated inside of a cosmic egg and then hatched into the 7th iteration of the universe. And that being also true for the movie, enough for the actor Pedro Pascal to know that, is itself another clue that Reed might be trying to thwart Galactus in this movie by trapping him through some other kind of axis of existence, reality. And we should note that this article also reminds us that in the comics, Franklin in particular has long been a subject of fascination for Galactus, the Devourer of Worlds, who does indeed come calling in first steps. Franklin Richards, as we noted in the video that came out on Monday, is a reality warper. Now, the article went on to describe what Ralph Ineson's Galactus will look like. In First Steps, Galactus will be portrayed by actor Ralph Ineson wearing actual purple and blue armor. The costume workshop on set is full of various attempts at making his signature look work. Quote, I didn't want to just use motion capture for Galactus. I wanted to actually have someone there embodying the part, Shackman says. So we built an entire costume for him, and we've done a lot of photography testing to figure it out. How do you make sure that the scale is correct? How do you film Mount Rushmore? And one final confirmation that this article included is that Dr. Doom will not be in this movie. It reads, positioning Galactus as the antagonist also distinguishes First Steps, since previous Fantastic Four movies all started with Dr. Doom. It's an understandable impulse, since Doom is perhaps the most iconic supervillain of all time, but Marvel's upcoming plans for Robert Downey Jr. as the character freed Shackman to try something else. Quote, Doom's a great character, but he takes up a lot of air, the director says. Other film adaptations have done both an origin story and Doom. We're doing neither, and that allows us to look at them from a fresh perspective. And I was so relieved hearing this. I agree with Shackman. This movie has so many other characters and ideas to introduce, and Doomsday should really be the Doom film. And actually, I pitched some ideas for how I would really love Doomsday to open in different videos, and wouldn't you know it, they also tie in with Oppenheimer. Comment down below with your thoughts on all this, and a special thank you to one of our YouTube members, Jeremy Dunham, who supports us at the executive producer level. Follow me at EA Voss and subscribe to all the channels in the New Rockstars network for breakdowns and news coverage of everything you love. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.